We understand that the Vaishnava actually is very rare. A person who dedicates his life to serving the Lord is very, very rare. And we see in the followers of Srila Prabhupada that they often did this, like literally, that they would forget everything, give their life to serving Krishna in various ways. So Jasomatinandana, he actually did that. He gave up all of his other interests in the world, and at a very young age, he dedicated himself to serving Srila Prabhupada for his movement. He was in America one time, he came back to India, and then for many, many years he's been sitting in India, dedicating himself to serving in various ways. That he was involved in printing books, particularly in the Gujarati language, and then he established these huge temples in Gujarat, huge temples. And throughout his whole life, he's been constantly serving Prabhupada in various ways. So put forth a lot of effort for that, and of course, as well as that, then he raised his family, did all this grihastha household duties. So this also shows the flexibility of the devotee of the Lord, that he doesn't have to renounce everything. He can go on with his family life as well. So therefore he did that, and at the same time he did very, very significant service for Srila Prabhupada, and he always was dedicated to remembering Srila Prabhupada and trying to keep Prabhupada in the minds of other persons as well. So he was serving on various bodies in India, like the Bureau, etc., and as well as being in charge of the Gujarat area. And in spite of that, he was also practicing spiritual life. And, many, many years ago, when I began translating, he said, I want a copy of Madhuri Kadambini, which I translated. I was a little surprised because I didn't even know anyone would know, and I translated it. But he was asking for a copy of that, and then I sent it to him, email, and he was like, okay, very good. So I was rather surprised that he took an interest in that work, which is a little esoteric for most devotees, but he took an interest in that work, and he was reading that. So he was, always dedicating himself to serving him. Always, and dedicating himself to Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. So as Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said, that actually the devotee doesn't really die, because we know, of course, that we're not body, we're the soul, so the body may die, and that's inevitable for everybody, but the soul continues forever. But the soul of the Vaishnava is different, because it's not affected by the karma that everyone else is affected by. When the devotee goes out of his body and leaves his body, it's guaranteed that he has a very auspicious body in the material world. That is, he has a very, very good birth as a devotee, or he ends up in the spiritual world with an eternal body. So no matter what happens to him, there's no loss. He's just transferring into a better body. That's all, wherever he goes. So the Vaishnava never dies. He's always alive. Even if separated from us, he's still going on carrying out his service to the Supreme Lord and Srila Prabhupada. So that was the essence of Jasomatinandana's life.
Thank you. Association with Yaso. Over the years, I remember in the 70s, we would cross paths quite a few times at the Mayapur Festival. And I remember at Juhu Beach, of course, he would visit Prabhupada there. But I can understand that he's a very, very special personality, because there's so much outpouring of respect from all over the world, from devotees all over the world. And so that we've had, Bhakti Charamaj was, a very similar type of situation where devotees from all over the world, when he passed away that day. So these types of personalities are very, very rare, very special. And Yaso was materially qualified and spiritually very qualified, but on both sides. He was in America doing a master's in engineering, met Prabhupada there, and as a young man, he was very. I remember he was a very handsome man. And if you see pictures of him in his youth, he's a very, very handsome man. And then he was asked by Prabhupada to come because he's a Gujarati, he'd go back to Gujarat. and translate the books and everything like that. But you know, even someone who got a condolence letter from the Prime Minister of India. You know, the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, had sent him a condolence letter. You know, so we saw with Bhakti Charamaj, the Chief Minister of Bengal, sent a special convoy into the airport to take his body out from the airport under special police escort with 2 ambulances going all the way out to Mayapur. So it just signifies that materially, spiritually, of course, Narendra Modi very much glorified him because of his contribution, especially to humanity and to Indian culture. So on both sides, you know, materially and spiritually, very wonderful personality. And I remember, when did he come out? Was it last year or the year before?
2018, yeah, February 2018, so 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2.5
Yeah.
years.
So I spent a bit of time with him in Sydney. He came to a couple of programs there that I was, and especially he came to one fundraising dinner and helped fundraise for the new property out in West Sydney there. And I was kind of like thankful because, you know, it takes a lot of money to put up these new projects and everything. So he there, you know, I spoke, he spoke, and even though, you know, I could see he wasn't keeping good health, I could see that he was in ill health, but he spoke very wonderfully, so clear, and just describing, you know, the mission of Krishna consciousness all over the world, and Prabhupada's position, and everyone just loved him. You know, everyone transfixed and hanging off every word type of thing, you know. So very, very a good speaker, you know, a good manager. He's one of the members of the ISKCON Bureau. So, and I read that, you know, there was like, how many temples, Manamaj, in Gujarat? 20 or 30 centers he opened in Gujarat under his management, so he achieved a lot. So it's when Deb Gauri invited me to come today, I was very honoured to be able to come and pay respects to Jasomatinandana Prabhu. So Hare Krishna. I'm sure others have got so many other stories.
So as Australian devotees, members of a Commonwealth country, in those days you didn't need a visa for India. So most of the devotees who went to the festival were all Americans, although they were from China and from Japan and from South America and France, and they were actually Americans. And so most of the devotees had to go back. And Prabhupada knew that the Australian devotees could stay, so he requested Mother Visa if we could stay. And fortunately, we went down and we spent 3 weeks with Srila Prabhupada in Bombay. Of course, also it was such a big, important event for Prabhupada because he saw the Juhu temple as one of his main projects in India. And he had all this trouble fighting Dr. Nair like that in getting the temple. So we were fortunate that we went down there, and Yaso came. I remember Yaso came, and I became good friends with him there. And Lokanath Swami was there, he was the Pujari, and Yaga Novendra Maharaj was there. He actually just shaved up the day before we went there. So they were like the 3 main Indian devotees that were there at that time. Anyhow, we went out on Harinam every day, and very quickly the judge passed dismissed the case, and we won. But still, Prabhupada wanted us to stay there. And you'll see there's very famous footage of Srila Prabhupada on morning walks along Juhu Beach. And in that footage you will see many shots of Yaso. Yaso was on many of those walks. And also there's a lot of footage of us having evening kirtan in front of Prabhupada, in front of the deities in Juhu at that time. At that time it was just a little shed and a little mandal probably about as big as this. And every night we would come and we would have Aarti and Kirtan in front of Prabhupada. And you see in that footage also, you see Yaso dancing very enthusiastically like that. So I went to the first 8 of the first 9 festivals, and every year I used to run into and catch up with Yaso, and over the years, again, so many times we would meet up, and we were always very cordial. About 5 years ago, I went to Rath Yatra in Baroda, and Yaso came down from Ahmedabad, and he attended the Baroda Rath Yatra. 1 million people in Baroda. When they have Rath Yatra, it's actually a holiday. The whole place shuts down just for Rath Yatra, and there was about 1 million people at the festival. Anyhow, Yaso came, and he invited me back to go to Ahmedabad, because it's only 2 hours. It's only a couple of hours to Ahmedabad. So I went back with him to the Ahmedabad temple, and I was amazed at the size of the temple. It's almost as big as Jubilee, maybe even bigger. Anyhow, this huge temple there, you know? And I was in awe. And there's a picture of him there. And actually, he did so much preaching for Prabhupada. He established the Baroda temple, the Surat temple, the Balavidya temple, and I heard that actually he established more than 20 temples in Gujarat, like that. So that's actually quite amazing service that he did to Srila Prabhupada. Actually, Yaso was rather a unique devotee. We see that Srila Prabhupada, he was trying to spread Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement in India, and he had very little success. No one would come. He established the League of Devotees, but no one would come. And then he had this plan of going to America and attracting the Westerners and bringing them back to India. And because the Indians at that time were following the Westerners, in that way he saw he could attract devotees like that. So Prabhupada came, and actually I see that Prabhupada attracted 3 very unique individuals when he was in America. First of all, it was Yaso, who was studying studying engineering, very intelligent young boy. And as soon as he saw Prabhupada, he immediately became attracted to him. And then another one was Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who was living and working in Canada at the time, and he immediately became attached to Prabhupada. And the other one, I think, who was quite significant was Swarup Damodar Maharaj, who also was met Prabhupada in America. And so these 3 unique individuals did so much preaching for Srila Prabhupada. They Gopal and Yaso went back to India and did so much wonderful preaching. And of course, Bhakti Swarup Damodar, he was engaged in one of Prabhupada's most important programs of preaching to the scientists, of preaching to the scientific community, like that. So I think these 3 individuals that Prabhupada met in America had very significant contribution to spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. So I saw, of course, a few years ago, he had a heart attack. He had surgery, bypass surgery, and he was rather stricken with having a stroke. But we saw him at Mumbai, at the Mumbai reunion, the 40th anniversary of the union, and of course he was one of the most important Indian devotees. He spoke a lot at that very wonderful festival. And I'm just wondering, did he go to Chippewa? He didn't go to Chippewa Festival. Anyhow, so I was very, very fortunate that I had Yaso's association. And when we used to meet, he was always so very, very nice and so very kind to me, like that. So I certainly have fond memories of this great servant of Srila Prabhupada.
So in Bombay in '74, I went there in January, and Jasomatinandana and Radha Kund were there a lot. Because the American visa issue, they had to leave a lot, so they would come and go to Bombay. They would go back to America and come And Sundari was their first child, was born when they were in Bombay. And Srila Prabhupada did want Jasomatinandana to go to Ahmedabad, but it took him a while before he actually got there. So after that, in May of 77, well, just before that, Jasomatinandana actually arranged my marriage with David Dharma. And the reason is David Dharma went there. He met David Dharma in Bombay, and David Dharma said, well, I want a wife. Jasomatinandana said, come to Ahmedabad, I'll arrange. And therefore we ended up in Ahmedabad. And we were there for 8 months. And so I got to know Jasomatinandana a lot more than as our temple president. So I'd like to say that Srila Prabhupada always really loved Yaso, because in those days there weren't that many Indian, mostly it was foreigners in Bombay, there weren't that many Indian devotees, and the ones that did come were sort of mostly like from villages like Lokanath Swami, Navigendra Maharaj, Tatpur. They all came from like village situations, whereas Jasomatinandana had come from America, you know, he'd been studying in America. He was so intelligent and so perceptive. And Srila Prabhupada really liked him. You know, you'd hear these exchanges, and you can hear them on the tapes when Jasomatinandana Prabhu was asking Prabhupada. So Prabhupada was really kind of instructing him very carefully so that he could take Krishna consciousness to Gujarat, which he did. So as the temple president, really, I have to say, he was pretty good. No complaints. I'll be surprised. No, he was good to us, and it was a small temple in Ahmedabad. That was all that was happening in Gujarat. They established this one temple. I think it was rented, and it was just a little house. And so he had hired a cook. So it was really Jasomatinandana Prabhu that gave all the classes, and he did so much preaching. Started off the life membership program there. So the reason he wanted me to go there was because I did life membership and had done Pujari work. So they installed Gaur Nitai there. They had big Gaur Nitai that they installed in 77. And then we had a lot of preaching and to make life members. That was the main source of preaching there. We didn't go out so much to distribute books because he felt that the Gujarati people would respect more if we go to offices and make life members. So that was our main service. And he got on very well with the local people. He got on well with dignitaries. He got on well with life members. They all really liked him. And he was very focused on preaching. There were lots of preaching programs going on, and he was always so together in his preaching, such a good preacher. So, and then he purchased some land outside Ahmedabad for establishing a farm. And at that time, Rachitambra and Chaitanya Singh and Rachitambra's daughter Jai Radhe turned up, and they kind of didn't really know what service to do, and he said, well, can you go to the farm? So they said, okay, we'll go out to the farm. So the problem was there was a house with no roof, and that was it. So, they said, I asked them later, because we didn't have any contact, there were no mobile phones, they were just out there in the sticks. And I asked them later, how was it? And they said, oh, it was great. We lived in this house, it had walls with no roof. And then she said, but then the rainy season came. So she said, we'd have to kind of put our sleeping bags right next to the wall and try to avoid the rain. And then if the direction changed, we would just get wet. So we'd dry our sleeping bags out the next day and then hope that it didn't rain the next day. So they were so austere. And after some time they went to, that wasn't really developed at the time because we were just starting off and there wasn't the money to do that. So then they went to Hyderabad. And okay, so after 8 months there, David wanted to go to, and wanted us to go to Orissa because it was Guru Govinda Maharaj who'd sort of been looking after him before that. So we decided to go to Orissa, and then Jasomatinandana was going through all the life members, and he said, because I had a preaching partner, Rangavati, So we did life membership. Before that, actually, in 77, in November, of course, Srila Prabhupada left. At the time, we had had a ticket to go see Srila Prabhupada, a train ticket, but he said, no, I want you to go on travelling Sankirtan. So myself and my partner, Rangavati, and David and his partner, went off on travelling Sankirtan. We went all over Gujarat to so many places. It's such a pious, far-out place, or at least it was then. So that was really nice. But then we got the message one day, Jasomatinandana one morning, November 15th, Jasomatinandana rang up and told us that Srila Prabhupada had left the night before, that we should drive to Baroda, which was quite a way away. We were way in the west of Gujarat, leave the van at Baroda and catch the train to Vrindavan, to be with all the devotees after Prabhupada left. So we did that. So then when we wanted to go in January, wanted to go to Orissa, Jasomatinandana counted up all the life members and he said, God, you made 48 members in 8 months. I don't want you to go. Anyway, but we have to go. So I just wanted to say all glories to his service to Srila Prabhupada and to thank him for our time in Ahmedabad, which was really, and it was a real adventure. We got to meet so many wonderful Gujarati people who became life members. It was very sort of a happening time. And we went on travelling Sankirtan all over Gujarat, as I said. And actually the night that Srila Prabhupada left, we used to preach all day and try to make life members. In the evenings we'd go out to people's shops and try to sell books. So that's what we were doing when Prabhupada left at 7:30, 7:25 that evening. We were out distributing books in one of the towns in western Gujarat. So we were happy there, and Jasomatinandana was always good to us, and we just loved the way he was very strict about the philosophy. He was such a great preacher. He was like, very effulgent and he was so kind of focused on preaching and a wonderful grasp of the philosophy. And all glories to how it spread all through Gujarat, and his big temples, and he's done wonderful service. So I know Srila Prabhupada would be so happy with such a dear disciple. And all glories to my godbrother, Jasomatinandana. Can I just read this?
Yeah, of course.
This is Mandava's poem.
I was just about to ask Mandava for real, thinking, he should speak next. So I wasn't meant to.
This is Jasomatinandana.
All glory to Jasomatinandana Prabhu.
Yeah.
I knew him in Bombay, he used to come there all the time. So I thought I'd write a poem about it.
His Grace Jasomatinandana Prabhu, a stalwart amongst us. To America you went, looking for gold. Get an education, you were told. You certainly did, but it wasn't quite the same. A providential occurrence, no one to blame. Your parents held high hopes. Your future looked so bright. Then along came Bhaktivedanta Swami to tug at you with all might. Indeed, you are one of the first in an Indian body to heed a message so sublime, a message of great need. Prabhupada plucked you out. He gave you the seed. He gave you a new life, a life at which you could really succeed. And succeed you certainly did, and oh, what great classes you gave. When you came to Juhu, we would all simply rave. Your erudition left us breathless, one that Prabhupada was very proud. And you soon gained notoriety as you preached bold and loud. The citizens of Ahmedabad, they threw money at your feet, and soon you built a temple for their lordships who could greet. And so it went on, much savor you did do. So Krishna's grace must have been on you. Goodbye, old friend, hope to see you soon. And in the meantime, chant that great Mahamantra tune. The servant Mandavadas.
And Vrindavan. And he used to discuss with me the problem of his temple in Baroda, legal problem. But I used to tell him I'm not an Indian lawyer, so I'm of no use to you. But then we used to discuss the Bhaktivedanta problem. And I always found him to be a good friend, very good friend, good advice. And very much committed to Prabhupada, very much committed to Prabhupada. My greatest problem, he knew, and Mukund Swami knows, was in early days of Prabhupada in London. I was invited by the Queen to Buckingham Palace. And I was in a very difficult position. The whole American organizations and the English organizations, they were attacking British Yatra and European Yatra. And I was asked by devotees to defend them. So I was in a very precarious position to come in contact with many devotees. So I was always on the outskirts, helping all the senior devotees, like Mukund Swami, Chitravira, Akhandi, and half a dozen devotees. The reason was, as I said, my position was precarious. I was invited by the Queen to Buckingham Palace. I used to think what the people will think of me. My colleagues in the law profession, am I associating with those devotees where their lifestyle comes in the London papers and American papers? What am I doing? So it was my own self-interest. I kept a lot of distance with the devotees. Except helping the devotees, I knew very well, half a dozen. But each time I met Prabhuji, he always helped me and told me about Prabhupada. And then we used to have a lot of association in Vrindavan because I used to go to Vrindavan for 6 months every year after I retired. And we used to discuss it, and he used to say to me, hey, you are so old and you look okay. I'm not too old. I said, you know, you've got everything here. I don't have anything here. So, okay. But I met him, he was an excellent preacher, very learned in the Shastra. So, I don't have much contribution.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for that.
As a devotee, we meet all sorts of people. Prabhupada gave the example of going on a boat across the ocean. Sometimes there are people on the boat that you don't want to know. And there are others that you become very friendly with. Prabhupada says the most important thing is to get to the other side. I spent a number of years in Bombay because I was missing honesty and openness that I felt was a pivotal point in any devotee, and that's what I felt in Srila Prabhupada. And it's, yeah, so when he surrendered to Prabhupada straight away, everything changed. Mandava's letter was wonderful. It's so true. He surrendered to Prabhupada. And he even, when he first wrote to Prabhupada, he was in Chicago. And he was saying that, oh, sure, Prabhupada, I talk to your photo every day on the Vyasasana, but you don't talk back. So I'm sending you a letter. And he said in that letter, it was the most wonderful Vyasa Puj Homi. And he requested that he could translate books into Gujarati. And Prabhupada replied to him, yes, I have read your letter. It is so wonderful, I want it printed in BTG magazine. Because you have the correct mood.
And when I first met Jasomatinandana, it's like the six Goswamis. They are friends with both the ruffians and the gentle people. And that's what I found with Yaso. He was so sharp. This guy was the sharpest devotee that I had met up till that time. There was no doubt. And somehow or other, he liked me and I liked him. He gave me his association whenever he came to Bombay, and I sought out his association. And what I loved about him was his openness and honesty. He was shastrically exceptionally strong. And with, as like Prabhupada said, you surrender with your intelligence. You don't surrender your intelligence. And Yaso is a perfect example of that. He surrendered with his intelligence. And as a result of that, his influence was so strong. Wherever he would go, the preaching would go on. People would want to take his association. And I'm looking at him now, and as Prabhupada says that the face is the index of the mind, and I can see Yaso smiling at me saying, "It's nice to see you here, Brihaspati." And I'm very happy to be here, Jasomatinandana Prabhu. And I look forward to getting your association in the future and serving with you. Thank you very much.
I didn't have much association with Prabhu. Did meet him in 2018 when he came here. But about 10 years ago, there was, because with Jasomatinandana, I think there's a whole, there's a dynasty that's associated with him, his descendants. And in 10 years ago, there's one of his descendants that came to the farm, Krishna Bhavana, who's here. And generally, you can tell the trees by the fruits that they bear. So I had association with Krishna Bhavana through her service, and she came to the farm for shelter, but actually she was found to be the shelter of everyone else by her service and the way she dealt with her situation and the way she served Krishna every day. She's one of the most wonderful garland makers, amongst other things. And she's very attentive to everything, and I told her the other week that she was my source of inspiration for kindness. Such a kind person. And her sons, like Nandu Gopal, Surabi, Gopal, they're also living examples of this dynasty, which obviously comes from Jasomatinandana Prabhu. So yes, it must be the fruits are there to prove the quality of the tree. So although I didn't meet him for very long, but I can tell by what he left behind that it's actually very great soul.
So,
He had a lot of children, I know that, but how many in the family?
eight children. Yeah, 8 children. But any other devotees like to say a few words? Say something? Anything? Mum?
Now?
Yes. This is my mum, Carolyn, just so all devotees.
Can you tell? I just wanted to say, unfortunately, we didn't meet Barbie's dad when he was here in 2018. Our daughter and Scott did, and so we unfortunately missed out on that pleasure. But we, on behalf of the family, what we really do have the pleasure of is having such a wonderful daughter as part of the Hooper family. We are so grateful to him for, I won't say giving us Barbie, that doesn't sound right, but we are so grateful for him for having such a wonderful lady as part of our family. Yeah. She's going to make me cry. She's wonderful. And Irene, agree with the comments that we just made about her. Yes, I can see the comments that we just made about her. She's wonderful. So we're very, very grateful to have her as part of the family.
Prabhupada.